The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Grand Belmont Hotel ballroom, and I watched my sister Elena wrap her arms around my ex-fiancé, Marcus Chen, the man who'd told me just 6 months ago that my glasses made me look like an ugly librarian, that no amount of love could make him attracted to someone who hid behind thick lenses like a coward. The same man who was now kissing her, his hand tangled in her perfectly straightened hair, while 300 wedding guests, my wedding guests, applauded what they thought was a romantic reconciliation between star-crossed lovers. I should have been devastated. I should have been on my knees, sobbing, begging him to come back. Instead, I smiled. Because I'd already lived through this moment once before. I'd already felt the knife of betrayal twist in my gut, already spent 3 years in a depression so deep I'd eventually stepped off the roof of my apartment building at 28 years old, glasses and all. And then I'd woken up at 18, the morning of my high school graduation, with crystal clear memories of a future that hadn't happened yet. This time, Marcus Chen wouldn't just lose me, he'd lose everything. The first time I lived through my 20s, I was Lin Wei, the forgettable middle daughter of the Lin family. My older sister Elena was the beauty, tall, graceful, with our mother's delicate features and our father's sharp business mind. My younger brother David was the golden child, the son who would inherit Lin Technologies when my father retired. And I was the one who wore thick glasses because my parents said contact lenses were an unnecessary expense, and LASIK was cosmetic vanity. I was the one who got a partial scholarship to state school while Elena went to Harvard. I was the one who came home every weekend to help my mother with housework while Elena networked at country clubs and David partied with his fraternity brothers. I met Marcus Chen at a charity gala when I was 22. He was 28, a rising star in venture capital, handsome in that calculated way where every hair was styled, every word measured. He noticed me, plain, invisible me, standing by the catering table, and he smiled. "You look lost," he'd said. "I always look lost," I'd replied, adjusting my glasses nervously. "It's my natural state." He'd laughed. He'd asked for my number. For 6 months, he'd made me feel seen. He'd taken me to nice restaurants, introduced me to his friends, told me I was brilliant and kind and everything he'd been looking for. He proposed on my 23rd birthday with a 2-carat diamond ring. My mother cried with joy. My father actually hugged me. Even Elena seemed happy, though I'd catch her looking at Marcus with an expression I couldn't quite read. The wedding was scheduled for June, exactly 1 year after the proposal. I was deliriously happy. I spent hours planning every detail, determined to make it perfect. I didn't notice that Marcus started working late more often. I didn't notice that he stopped complimenting me, started making little comments about my appearance instead. "Have you thought about getting LASIK?" My colleague's wife got it and she looks 10 years younger. "Maybe you should try contact lenses for the wedding." The photographer said glasses can cause glare. "Elena doesn't wear glasses. I wonder if it's genetic or if she just takes better care of her eyes." I was so eager to please him that I actually scheduled a LASIK consultation for the week after the wedding. I even told him about it, hoping he'd be pleased. He just nodded absently, staring at his phone. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found him in my parents' library with Elena. They were standing close, too close, and when they saw me, they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. "Way," Elena had said brightly. "We were just discussing the seating arrangements." But Marcus's collar was rumpled and Elena's lipstick was smudged. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was being paranoid and insecure. Marcus loved me. He'd chosen me. On the day of the wedding, I put on my dress, a beautiful ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves that had cost more than my entire college tuition. I wore my glasses because the contact lenses I'd finally bought made my eyes burn in water, and I couldn't walk down the aisle crying for the wrong reasons. I walked into the bridal suite 90 minutes before the ceremony and found Marcus with Elena. They were fully clothed, but his hands were on her waist, her arms around his neck, and they were kissing like they'd been doing it for months. Maybe they had been. Marcus pulled away when he saw me. Elena tried to look ashamed, but couldn't quite hide her triumph. "Way," Marcus said, his voice flat. "We need to talk." "I can see that," I replied. My voice sounded distant, disconnected from my body. "I'm sorry," he said, but he didn't sound sorry. I really tried to love you, but Elena and I, We have a connection, something I've never felt with anyone else. We didn't mean for this to happen, Elena added, and that was somehow worse. The pretense that they were victims of circumstance rather than architects of betrayal. You're calling off the wedding? I asked stupidly. No, Marcus said. I think that would be too humiliating for everyone. All these guests, all this money your parents spent. We'll tell them I'm calling it off because of irreconcilable differences. Something vague. You'll be the sympathetic party. How generous, I said. But Elena and I are going to be together. I hope you can understand and eventually be happy for us. I'd stood there in my wedding dress, wearing my ugly glasses, and watched them walk out together. 30 minutes later, Marcus made the announcement to the guests. My mother sobbed. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years. And Elena stood next to Marcus, her hand in his, looking radiant. The next 3 years were a blur of depression and therapy and well-meaning friends telling me I was better off and deserved better. Marcus and Elena got married in a private ceremony 6 months later. They moved to Los Angeles, where Marcus opened his own venture capital firm with money from Elena's trust fund, the trust fund I'd never known she had, the trust fund our parents had apparently set up only for her because she was the one with real potential. I moved to a tiny apartment across town and got a job as a data analyst at a mid-level tech company. I was good at my work, good at being invisible, good at going through the motions of living without actually being alive. On the morning of my 28th birthday, I got a Facebook notification. Elena and Marcus Chen are celebrating their second wedding anniversary in Bali. The photos showed them on a perfect beach, Elena's arms around Marcus's neck, both of them glowing with happiness. The caption read, "Found my soulmate when I least expected it. Some love stories are worth waiting for." 300 people liked it, dozens commented with heart emojis and congratulations. I closed my laptop, walked to the roof of my apartment building, and stepped off. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the pink curtains my mother had chosen when I was 12. My phone alarm was blaring, pomp and circumstance, because today was graduation day. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. The engagement, the betrayal, the depression, the roof. Then I looked at my hands, 18-year-old hands, free of the scars I'd gotten from a cooking accident at 25. And I knew I'd been given a second chance. My first thought was simple and clear. I would get LASIK before Marcus Chen ever laid eyes on me. My second thought was darker. I would make sure everyone who'd hurt me paid for what they'd done, or what they would have done. The timeline was confusing, but my anger was not. I spent the first week of my rebirth in a daze, processing the impossibility of my situation while going through the motions of graduation parties and family dinners. I watched Elena preen in her valedictorian glory, accepting congratulations from relatives who barely acknowledged my own summa cum laude achievement. I watched my parents beam at David as he announced his acceptance to Yale's undergraduate business program, while they'd barely glanced at my full-ride scholarship to state. The trust fund revelation had burned me in my first life, and I needed to know if it was real. On a Saturday afternoon, I snuck into my father's study while he was golfing. I knew his laptop password. He'd never changed it, even in the future, which is how I'd eventually discovered the trust fund documents after his death in the original timeline. I logged in and navigated to his financial records. There it was, the Lin Family Trust, established when Elena turned 18 with a current value of $2.3 million. The beneficiary was listed as Elena Lin. There was a note in the document, to be used for business ventures, property investment, or other wealth-building activities. David Lin to receive equivalent trust at age 18. There was no mention of me. I took screenshots on my phone and logged out carefully. Then I sat in my father's leather chair and let myself feel the full weight of that betrayal. They'd planned my exclusion. They'd decided I wasn't worth investing in. That night at dinner, I asked casually, "Dad, do you have any financial plans for my future? College savings bonds, trust funds, anything like that?" My father looked up from his steak. "You have your scholarship. That's better than most kids get." "Elena has a trust fund," I said. "I found the documents." The table went silent. Elena's fork clattered against her plate. My mother's face went pale. How dare you snoop through my private files? My father said, his voice dangerously quiet. How dare you exclude me from the family finances while setting up millions for my siblings? I countered. Was I that much of a disappointment? Watch your tone, my mother snapped. Your father provides for this family. Selectively, apparently. Elena's trust fund is for her future, my father said. She has the skills and drive to build something with it. You're going to be a teacher or a librarian or something. You don't need that kind of capital. I'm going to major in computer science and data analytics, I said. I have a 4.0 GPA and a full scholarship to the third best tech program in the state. Public school, Elena murmured, just loud enough for everyone to hear. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw what I'd missed in my first life. The smugness, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that she was better than me. You're right, I said calmly. I don't need family money. I'll make my own. I left the table and went to my room. I heard them arguing after I left. My mother defending the trust fund arrangement. David asking if he'd get his money when he turned 18. Elena saying I was ungrateful and dramatic. None of them came to apologize. That was fine. I didn't need their apologies. I needed their downfall. The next morning, I called the LASIK center I'd researched in my previous life. I had $4,000 saved from birthday money, holiday gifts, and the small stipend from my scholarship. The surgery would cost $3,500. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I told the receptionist. How old are you, dear? 18. I've been wearing glasses since I was 7. My prescription has been stable for 3 years. You'll need parental consent. I'm a legal adult. I don't need consent. I need an appointment. She scheduled me for the following Tuesday. I told my parents I was visiting the campus for orientation. They didn't ask questions. They were too busy planning Elena's Harvard going-away party. The consultation went perfectly. My eyes were ideal candidates. The doctor scheduled my surgery for 2 weeks later, early July, which would give me the rest of the summer to heal before college started. Any particular reason you want this now? The doctor asked kindly. Most young people wait until after college. I'm starting fresh, I said. I don't want to carry anything from my old life into my new one. He seemed to think I was being metaphorical. He had no idea. The surgery itself was strange and painless and miraculous. I lay on the table while lasers reshaped my corneas, and 40 minutes later, I walked out with slightly blurry vision that the doctor promised would sharpen over the next few days. By the end of the week, I could see perfectly. No glasses, no contacts, just my own eyes seeing the world in high definition for the first time since I was 7 years old. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Without the heavy black frames hiding half my face, I had my mother's bone structure, my father's strong jaw. I was never going to be Elena-level beautiful. She had something ethereal and untouchable about her, but I was pretty. Actually pretty. I thought about Marcus Chen, who I wouldn't meet for another 4 years, and I smiled. He would never know the girl with glasses. He would never get the chance to make me feel small. But first, I had to set the stage. I spent the rest of the summer preparing. I'd kept journals in my previous life, detailed, obsessive journals documenting every slight, every disappointment, every moment of realization. I couldn't bring them back with me, but I remembered enough. I knew that Elena's trust fund was managed by Harrison and Webb Financial Advisors, a boutique wealth management firm in Manhattan. I knew that Marcus Chen would meet Elena at a charity gala in December 2026, 4 years from now, while I was still supposedly engaged to him. I knew that my brother David would flunk out of Yale in his sophomore year and come crawling back to my father for money and forgiveness. Most importantly, I knew that Lin Technologies, my father's company, would nearly collapse in 2028 when a competitor undercut them on a major government contract. My father would save the company by selling a 40% stake to a venture capital firm for $50 million. That firm would be Marcus's company, backed by Elena's trust fund. They would become millionaires off my family's desperation, and I would be dead on the pavement below my apartment building. Not this time. I started a blog that summer, anonymously, writing about tech trends and market analysis. I'd spent years as a data analyst in my previous life, and I understood the industry inside and out. Within a month, I had 1,000 followers. Within 2 months, Tech recruiters were asking to connect with me on LinkedIn. I started investing the money I'd saved from the LASIK fund and my scholarship stipend. I bought stock in companies I knew would explode: Tesla, which was still relatively cheap, Zoom before the pandemic, Shopify before e-commerce took over the world. I only had a few $100s, but I had time and knowledge that was worth more than gold. By the time I started college in September, I had $800 in stock investments and a popular tech blog under the pseudonym Data Driven Dreamer. I also had a plan. State University wasn't Harvard, but it was perfect for what I needed. The computer science program was rigorous and well connected to the tech industry. My professors actually knew my name, unlike the massive lecture halls Elena complained about in her Instagram post from Cambridge. I threw myself into my coursework with an intensity that surprised even me. I'd been a good student in my first life, but I'd also been depressed, anxious, and constantly seeking approval from family members who would never give it. This time I studied because I wanted to, because I knew exactly where each skill would lead. I took every advanced programming course available. I learned Python, Java, C++, SQL. I joined the university's tech club and pitched ideas for startups, even though none of them went anywhere. I networked with professors and visiting industry professionals. I made myself visible and valuable. By my sophomore year, I had a paid internship at a growing tech company in the city. By junior year, I was freelancing on the side, building custom databases and analytics tools for small businesses. The money wasn't huge, but it was mine. I funneled everything I could into my stock portfolio, watching my investments grow steadily. Elena, meanwhile, was thriving at Harvard. She posted constantly about her amazing friends, her incredible opportunities, her internship at a prestigious consulting firm. She came home for holidays with designer clothes and expensive jewelry, gifts from her trust fund, I knew, though she pretended they were thrift finds or gifts from friends. David struggled at Yale. He called home drunk one night at the end of his freshman year, sobbing that he was failing economics and might lose his scholarship. My parents bailed him out with private tutors and generous donations to the university. He scraped by with C's and came home that summer sullen and defensive. I barely saw them. I spent my summers in the city, taking extra courses and working. When I did come home for major holidays, I was polite and distant. They barely noticed. I was the boring one, the one without drama or demands, perfect. In December of my senior year, I got an email that changed everything. Data-driven dreamer, we'd like to discuss an acquisition of your analytics platform. I'd built a side project over the past 2 years, a data visualization tool that made complex market analytics accessible to non-technical users. I'd launched it as a free web app, mostly as a portfolio piece, but it had gained a small following among financial advisors and small business owners. The email was from Apex Capital, a mid-size venture capital firm. They wanted to buy the platform for $150,000 and hire me as a consultant. I negotiated them up to $200,000 and 2% equity in their portfolio companies. I graduated in May with a computer science degree, a job offer from a top tech company in San Francisco, and a net worth just over $300,000 between my investments and the acquisition. I was 22 years old, financially independent, and completely invisible to my family. They didn't even come to my college graduation. Elena was in Milan for a consulting project. David had finals. My parents said they couldn't get time off work. I collected my diploma alone, took myself out for dinner at an expensive restaurant, and toasted to the life I was building. Then I moved to San Francisco and waited. Marcus Chen came into my life exactly the way I remembered, except this time I was ready. It was October 2026. I was 23, working as a senior data analyst at a unicorn startup, living in a beautiful apartment in Pacific Heights that I'd bought with my stock returns. I'd continued investing aggressively, and my portfolio had grown to over $800,000. The pandemic had made me a small fortune through Zoom and Shopify alone. I'd also, carefully, strategically, built a reputation in the tech and venture capital community. I spoke at conferences. I wrote white papers on market trends. I consulted for investment firms. I was becoming someone people noticed. The charity gala where I'd first met Marcus in my previous life was an annual event for children's literacy. Last time, I'd been there as my mother's plus one, wearing an ill-fitting dress and my thick glasses, trying to be invisible. This time, I was invited as a speaker. I was supposed to give a 5-minute talk about tech investment trends. I wore a black silk dress that cost more than my entire First Life wardrobe combined. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup was perfect, and my eyes, my perfectly corrected eyes, saw everything in crystal clarity. Marcus Chen was there, exactly as I remembered. 29 now, more polished, more confident. He was talking to a group of investors near the bar, and I watched him charm them with practiced ease. I waited until he was alone, getting a drink, and then I made my move. Marcus Chen, I said, extending my hand. Lin Wei, I'm speaking tonight on tech investment trends. I've followed your work at Chen Ventures. He took my hand, and I saw the moment he registered me, not as someone to pity or overlook, but as someone interesting, someone worth knowing. Lin Wei, he repeated. I know that name. You consulted on the Apex portfolio restructuring last year. Guilty. That project got me promoted. I read your analysis. It was brilliant. Are you open to freelance work? We're always looking for good data scientists. Potentially, but I'm selective about my clients. Send me your pitch deck and we can talk. I smiled politely and walked away, leaving him watching me. Hook set. Marcus pursued me professionally first. He sent me the pitch deck for Chen Ventures along with a list of their portfolio companies and their growth metrics. I sent back a detailed analysis pointing out inefficiencies and missed opportunities. He was impressed enough to offer me a consulting contract at $500 per hour. I took it, not because I needed the money, but because I needed access. Over the next few months, I became an integral part of Chen Ventures' operations. I built custom analytics tools for their portfolio tracking. I advised on potential investments. I attended their quarterly meetings and strategy sessions. Marcus relied on me, trusted me, and eventually asked me to dinner to discuss a potential partnership opportunity. We went to an expensive restaurant in Soma. He pitched me on joining Chen Ventures as a partner, bringing my technical expertise and market insights to the firm. I'd have to leave my current position, I said carefully. It would be a significant risk. I think you're ready for it. You're one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, Lin. There it was, my name, my real name, said with respect and admiration. In my first life, he'd called me Wei with casual dismissiveness. Now I was Lin, professional and equal. I'll think about it, I said. But I have some conditions. Name them. Full equity partnership, not just profit sharing. My name on the door, and I get final say on any portfolio company that operates in the tech sector. He hesitated. That's aggressive. I'm worth it. You know I am. He laughed. You're right. Let me draw up the papers. We shook hands, and I felt a dark satisfaction. He had no idea who I really was. No idea that in another timeline he'd destroyed me. No idea that I was about to destroy him. I joined Chen Ventures in January 2027. By March, I'd made the firm $3 million through a single strategic investment that I knew would pay off. By June, I was Marcus's most valuable partner. We were not dating. We were not even particularly friendly outside of work. I kept our relationship scrupulously professional, even when I could see him starting to look at me differently. Lingering glances, unnecessary meetings, casual touches on my arm during conversations. I knew the timeline. In my first life, I'd met Marcus in October 2026 at the charity gala. We'd dated for 6 months, gotten engaged in April 2027, and planned our wedding for June 2028. Elena had been home for summer break from Harvard in July 2027 when she and Marcus had first connected. They'd carried on an affair for 11 months before he'd left me at the altar. This timeline was different. I'd met Marcus in October 2026, yes, but as a professional equal rather than a charity case. He hadn't pursued me romantically because I hadn't positioned myself as available or vulnerable. And Elena was still at Harvard, still building her perfect life, completely unaware that her future was about to implode. In July 2027, Elena came home for summer break. She'd graduated Harvard in May with honors and a job offer from McKinsey. My parents threw her a massive party at our childhood home. They invited everyone who mattered in their social circle, including business contacts and potential investors. I got a perfunctory invitation via text message. Elena's home, celebration at the house Saturday at 6. Try to make it. I showed up at 6:30, dressed in designer casual, expensive but understated. I'd been working out regularly, eating well, investing in myself. I looked good, really good. The party was already in full swing. Elena was holding court in the living room, surrounded by admirers, talking about her Harvard experience and her consulting career. She was wearing a white sundress and heels, looking radiant and triumphant. My parents were by the bar, schmoozing with guests. They saw me come in, and my father actually did a double take. "Wei," my mother said, My God, you look different, I supplied. It's been a while. "You got rid of your glasses," Elena called from across the room. "Finally took that leap?" 4 years ago, actually, right after high school. I watched her process this, watched her realize that she'd been so self-absorbed that she hadn't even noticed her own sister's transformation. Several other people were staring at me now, and I could hear whispers. "That's the other daughter?" I didn't know they had another daughter. "She's beautiful." Elena's smile tightened. "What have you been up to?" she asked, walking over with her drink. "Still doing the computer thing?" "I'm a partner at Chen Ventures. We focus on early-stage tech investments. It's been a good year." "Chen Ventures? I think I've heard of them. Small firm?" 500 million assets under management. "We're growing." Her expression flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Annoyance? Fear? "Impressive," she said finally. "Good for you." "Thanks. Congratulations on Harvard and McKinsey. I'm sure you'll do great things." I meant it to sound sincere, but something in my tone must have been off because she narrowed her eyes at me. "It's nice that we're both successful," she said, "even if we took different paths." Absolutely. Some people need Harvard degrees and family money to succeed. Some of us just need talent and work ethic. The nearby conversations quieted. Someone coughed. Elena's face went red. "I worked hard for everything I achieved." "I'm sure you did. That trust fund was just a happy coincidence." "How dare you?" "Elena," my mother interrupted, swooping in with forced cheerfulness. "Some of the Wangs want to meet you. They're potential clients for your consulting work." Elena shot me a poisonous look and stalked off. I smiled and went to get a drink. That's when I saw him. Marcus Chen, standing near the catering table, looking uncomfortable in a suit and hussas tie. He'd come because my father had invited him. They'd met at a business conference a few months ago, and my father was always networking. Marcus saw me and his face lit up. "Lynn, I didn't know this was your family." "Surprise, my Ned. Lynn Technologies is my father's company. Elena's my older sister." He looked at Elena across the room, then back at me. "You two don't look alike." "She takes after our mother. I take after our father." We talked for a few minutes about work, carefully avoiding personal topics, but I could see Elena watching us from across the room, and I could see the moment she decided Marcus Chen was interesting. She came over 20 minutes later, all smiles and charm. "Marcus, so nice to meet you. I'm Elena Lin, Wei's sister." "Wei?" Marcus said, confused. "That's what we call her at home. It's her middle name." "Well, technically Lin is her family name, but you know how it is with Chinese names. So confusing for Americans." I watched her work, watched her deploy every tool in her arsenal. She was good. She'd always been good at this, making herself irresistible, making men feel special and interesting and lucky to be in her presence. But this time, Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Actually, in professional contexts, she goes by Lynn. I think of her that way." "Oh, of course, professional contexts." Elena's smile was sharp. "I forgot you two work together. That must be nice, spending so much time together." "It is," Marcus said. "She's one of the smartest people I know." High praise. Wei Lin was always good with numbers. Not much else, but definitely numbers. Actually, I said calmly, I'm also good with revenge. Want to see? Marcus laughed, thinking I was joking. Elena's smile froze. Excuse me, I said. I should say hello to some other guests. I walked away, leaving them together. It was a risk, but I'd learned something important. Marcus wasn't attracted to Elena, not yet. Not when I was the one he knew, respected, and relied on. This timeline was different. This timeline, I was winning. Over the next few months, Elena tried repeatedly to infiltrate my professional life. She called Marcus's office, suggesting coffee meetings to discuss potential consulting synergies. She showed up at tech events where she knew I'd be speaking, positioning herself in his line of sight. She even applied for a position at one of our portfolio companies, though I made sure that application went nowhere. But Marcus wasn't interested. He was polite but distant with her, treating her like any other networking contact. Meanwhile, he and I were building something genuinely powerful, a professional partnership that was making us both very wealthy. By the end of 2027, Chen Ventures had doubled its assets under management. I'd personally brought in $50 million in new investments through my tech industry connections. My equity stake was worth over $10 million on paper. Elena, meanwhile, was struggling at McKinsey. The consulting lifestyle didn't suit her. Too many hours, too much travel, too little immediate gratification. She complained constantly when she came home for holidays, though she still projected success on social media. My parents' company, Lin Technologies, was starting to show cracks. The government contract that would nearly destroy them was coming up for bid, and I knew they were going to lose it. I'd spent months positioning Chen Ventures to be ready for their inevitable desperation. Everything was falling into place. In March 2008, Elena quit McKinsey. She came home claiming she wanted to pursue entrepreneurship and build something meaningful. My parents were thrilled and immediately offered to back her with her trust fund. She launched a boutique consulting firm aimed at helping tech companies with their market positioning. It was expensive, poorly planned, and relied entirely on her Harvard pedigree and family connections to attract clients. One of her first moves was to approach Chen Ventures for investment. Marcus forwarded me her pitch deck with a note. Your sister's company, thoughts? I reviewed it carefully. The business model was weak, the financials were optimistic to the point of fantasy, and her management team was essentially just her and a recent college graduate she'd hired as an assistant. I wrote back, hard pass, no viable path to profitability, and the market is oversaturated with consulting firms. She's relying on prestige and connections rather than actual value creation. Agreed, Marcus replied. Turning it down. Elena was furious when she got the rejection. She called me directly, which she never did. You sabotaged my pitch, she said without preamble. I evaluated it honestly. It's not a good investment. Because you're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. I'm not jealous of someone burning through their trust fund on a vanity project. My company is not a vanity project? Then prove it. Bootstrap it without family money. Build something real. Come back in a year with actual revenue and actual clients, and maybe we'll talk. She hung up on me. I smiled and went back to work. In May 2028, Lin Technologies lost the government contract to a competitor who underbid them by 30%. My father called an emergency board meeting. The company was hemorrhaging money, facing layoffs, and desperately needed capital. He reached out to several venture capital firms, including Chen Ventures. Marcus called me into his office. Your father's company is in trouble. I know. He's asking for $50 million for a 40% stake. I know. Is it worth it? I pretended to think. Long term, yes. Lin Technologies has good underlying tech and strong government relationships. They made a strategic mistake on this contract, but the company is fundamentally sound. With proper management and capital infusion, it could be worth $200 million in 5 years. Would you want to be involved in the restructuring? Absolutely not. I'd want to bring in outside management. Even though it's your family's company? Especially because it's my family's company. Marcus studied me for a long moment. There's a story there. There is, but it's not one that affects this deal. We made the investment. Chen Ventures acquired 40% of Lin Technologies for $50 million, dollars, and I recused myself from all management decisions to avoid conflicts of interest. An outside CEO was brought in, and my father was moved to a chairman advisory role, essentially sidelined from day-to-day operations. My parents were devastated but had no choice. It was our money or bankruptcy. Elena tried to position her consulting firm to work with Lin Technologies in the restructuring. I made sure that didn't happen either. At a tense family dinner in June, my father looked at me across the table and said, "You could have helped us. You could have invested more favorably." I invested as a professional, not as a daughter. If you'd wanted family loyalty, you should have treated me like family instead of an afterthought. "We gave you everything," my mother said. "You gave me a scholarship to state school while Elena got a trust fund in Harvard. You didn't come to my college graduation. You didn't notice when I got LASIK. You barely noticed I existed until I became successful enough to be useful." "That's not fair," Elena said. "You're right, it's not fair, it's karma." By the end of 2028, my net worth had crossed $15 million. Chen Ventures was one of the most successful small VC firms in the Bay Area, and I was being featured in Forbes and TechCrunch as a rising star in tech investing. Elena's consulting firm had collapsed after 6 months. She'd burned through $500,000 of her trust fund and had nothing to show for it. She moved back home and started working as a freelance consultant, but her heart wasn't in it. My parents were still speaking to me, barely, but our relationship was cold and transactional. They'd realized too late that they'd underestimated me, and now I held significant power over their company's future. David had graduated from Yale and was working at a friend's startup in Austin. He was the only family member who seemed genuinely happy for my success, probably because I was the only one who'd never had expectations of him. And Marcus had finally asked me to dinner for non-work reasons. "I know we've kept things professional," he said, standing in my office doorway one Friday evening in December, "but I'd like to take you out, just the two of us. Not to talk about portfolio companies or market trends, just to talk." I looked at him, really looked at him. In my first life, he'd been my everything. My escape from family disappointment, my proof that I was lovable, my future. I'd been so desperate for validation that I'd missed all the warning signs, all the small cruelties, all the ways he'd made me feel small. Marcus didn't know that version of me. He'd never met the girl with glasses who apologized for existing. He'd only known Lin Wei, the brilliant investor, the confident partner, the woman who walked away from conversations instead of begging people to stay. And I could see it in his eyes. He was attracted to this version of me, maybe even falling for her. It would be so easy to say yes, to let him take me to dinner, to date him, to build something real with him. This Marcus hadn't betrayed me yet. This Marcus might never betray me. But I remembered the kiss in the bridal suite. I remembered Elena's triumph and his flat, emotionless apology. I remembered 3 years of depression and a roof and the moment of falling. Some things couldn't be forgiven, even if they hadn't happened yet. "Marcus," I said gently, I'm flattered, I really am. But I don't date business partners. It's a hard rule for me." "What if I wasn't your business partner?" "You are, though, and you're also one of the best professional relationships I have. I'd rather keep that than risk it for something romantic." He looked disappointed but not devastated. "I respect that. Can I ask, is there someone else?" "No, there's just me. And right now, that's enough." He nodded and left, and I felt something release in my chest. I'd broken the pattern. I'd chosen differently. Marcus Chen would never be my fiancé. He would never get the chance to destroy me. But I wasn't done with my revenge yet. In January 2029, I made my move on Elena. She'd been increasingly desperate for money, her trust fund depleted by her failed business venture. She was taking on consulting work wherever she could find it, but her reputation had been damaged by her company's spectacular failure. She posted on LinkedIn about looking for exciting new opportunities in tech and consulting. I sent her a message. "I have a consulting opportunity that might interest you. Coffee?" She agreed immediately, probably assuming I'd finally come around to helping her out of family obligation. We met at a trendy cafe in Pacific Heights. She ordered an expensive latte and as a pastry. I had black coffee. Thanks for reaching out, she said, trying to hide her eagerness. I know things have been tense between us. They have, I agreed, but I believe in second chances. Her face lit up. Really? I have a portfolio company that needs help with market positioning. It's a 6-month contract, $200,000 total, with potential for extension if results are good. That sounds perfect. Which company? Next Gen Analytics. They develop AI-powered financial forecasting tools. Growing fast, but they need someone to help them refine their messaging and break into enterprise clients. I can definitely do that. Harvard and McKinsey give me great credibility with enterprise clients. I smiled. Exactly what I thought. There's just one thing. This company is very metrics-driven. Everything needs to be tracked and measured. ROI, conversion rates, client acquisition costs, they'll expect detailed reporting on everything you do. Of course, that's standard consulting practice. Great. I'll send over the contract and the NDA. They're very protective of their IP, so the NDA is pretty comprehensive. But it's all standard stuff. She signed the contract the next day without reading it carefully. If she had, she would have seen the clauses about performance benchmarks, the requirement for weekly detailed reports, and the liquidated damages provision if she failed to meet her targets. Next Gen Analytics was a real company in our portfolio, but it wasn't struggling with market positioning. It was actually doing quite well. What it needed was a scapegoat. The company's CEO, David Chen, no relation to Marcus, was brilliant but ruthless. He'd been accused of workplace harassment at his previous company, and while nothing was ever proven, his reputation was tarnished. I'd invested in his company anyway because the technology was solid and the potential returns were enormous. But David Chen had a problem. He needed to show his board that he was addressing his leadership issues by hiring a consultant to improve company culture and communications. It was all performative, but it kept the board happy. Elena was perfect for this. She had the credentials, but not the skills. She would make recommendations that David would ignore. And when things inevitably went wrong, he'd have someone to blame. I'd structured the contract so that Elena's performance would be measured against targets that were nearly impossible to achieve without full C-suite buy-in, which David would never give her. When she failed to meet those targets, she'd owe NextGen $50,000 in liquidated damages for breach of contract. It was a trap, and she'd walked right into it. For the first month, Elena was optimistic. She met with NextGen's leadership team, conducted surveys, developed recommendations. She worked hard, I'll give her that. But David Chen ignored everything she suggested. He canceled meetings, dismissed her reports, and made it clear to his team that her presence was purely for show. Elena didn't have the political savvy to navigate around him or the leverage to force his hand. By month 3, she was panicking. Her reports to me were increasingly defensive, blaming the company's toxic culture and uncooperative leadership for her lack of progress. I forwarded her concerns to David Chen as required by my oversight role. He responded with detailed documentation of every meeting she'd missed, every deliverable she'd submitted late, every recommendation she'd made that showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the company's business model. Some of it was true, some of it was exaggerated. All of it was damning. At the 4-month mark, David Chen terminated the consulting contract for cause. He cited Elena's failure to meet performance benchmarks and demanded the $50,000 liquidated damages as specified in the contract. Elena called me crying. He set me up. You set me up. This whole thing was a trap. The contract was clear, I said calmly. Assad, you had specific deliverables and benchmarks. You didn't meet them. Because he wouldn't cooperate. You knew he wouldn't cooperate. I knew he was a difficult client. That's why the pay was so high. If you couldn't handle difficult clients, you shouldn't have taken the contract. I don't have $50,000. My trust fund is gone. Then you'll need to work out a payment plan or file for bankruptcy. Either way, that's between you and NextGen's legal team. How can you do this to me? I'm your sister. You've been saying that a lot lately. Funny how we're only sisters when you need something. I hung up. She called back 17 times. I didn't answer. NextGen sued her for the liquidated damages. My parents tried to help her fight it, but the contract was airtight. She ended up settling for $40,000, paid out over 2 years, which meant she'd be in debt and working just to cover those payments for the foreseeable future. Her consulting career was over. No one would hire someone who'd been sued by a client for breach of contract, especially not in the tight-knit tech world where reputation was everything. Elena moved back home permanently. She got a job as an administrative assistant at a local real estate agency, making $45,000 a year. My mother begged me to forgive the debt. I refused. My father called me cruel and vindictive. I didn't disagree, but I still wasn't done. In June 2029, I made my final move. Lin Technologies had recovered nicely under new management. The company was profitable again, its stock price had tripled, and Chen Ventures' 40% stake was now worth $150 million. My father had been relegated to a ceremonial role, showing up for board meetings but having no real power. It was killing him. He'd built this company from nothing, and now it belonged to someone else. He called me one night, drunk. "You destroyed me," he said. "Your own father, you destroyed me." "You destroyed yourself," I replied. "I just chose not to save you." "Because of the trust fund? Because we invested in Elena instead of you? That's what this is about?" It's about 23 years of being invisible, of being the daughter who didn't matter, of watching you pour money and attention into my siblings while treating me like an afterthought. We gave you an education. I got myself an education. I paid for my own LASIK surgery. I built my own career. And now I own 40% of your company and you can't do anything about it. What do you want? Money? I'll sell my shares, give you whatever you want. I don't want your money, Dad. I wanted you to see me, to value me, to treat me like I mattered. You matter, he said, his voice breaking. You've always mattered. Not enough. Never enough. I hung up and blocked his number. In August 2029, Marcus Chen announced he was leaving Chen Ventures to start his own fund. It was amicable. We'd grown the firm beyond what either of us had imagined, and now we both wanted different things. I'll buy out your shares if you want to stay, I offered. Or you can buy out mine. Either way. What do you want? I thought about it. Chen Ventures was successful, but it wasn't my passion. I'd built it as a tool for revenge, not as a long-term career. I'll sell to you, I said. I want to do something different. Like what? I'm not sure yet, but I'm only 26. I have time to figure it out. We negotiated the buyout over the course of a month. He paid me $20 million for my equity stake, which was more than fair. We shook hands, signed papers, and went our separate ways. He tried one more time. Lynn, are you sure about the dinner thing? We're not business partners anymore. I smiled. I'm sure, but thank you for asking. And thank you for treating me like an equal. That meant more than you know. He left confused, and I felt closure finally settling over me like a warm blanket. Marcus Chen had been my cautionary tale in my first life. In this one, he'd been my stepping stone. And now I was done with him. I spent the next 6 months traveling. I went to Tokyo, Paris, Barcelona, Cape Town. I ate expensive food and stayed in luxury hotels and did absolutely nothing productive for the first time in my life. I was 26 years old, worth $30 million after taxes and investments, and completely, utterly free. I thought about my first life often during those months. The girl with glasses who'd been so desperate to be loved that she'd accepted crumbs from people who should have given her everything. The woman who'd been so broken by betrayal that she'd seen death as her only escape. I mourned her sometimes. She'd deserved better than what she'd gotten. But I also celebrated what I'd become. Someone who didn't need external validation. Who'd built her own empire, who'd faced down everyone who'd ever hurt her and won. In December 2029, I returned to San Francisco and started a new venture. A nonprofit organization providing scholarships and mentorship for young women in STEM fields, particularly those from families who didn't support their ambitions. I called it the Invisible Girls Initiative. The first scholarship recipient was an 18-year-old named Maya Rodriguez. She was brilliant, passionate about computer science, and desperately poor. Her parents wanted her to get married and work in the family restaurant instead of going to college. I gave her a full scholarship, a laptop, and a mentor, me. Why are you doing this? She asked when we first met. You don't even know me. Because someone should have done it for me, I said. And because I see you. You're not invisible. You never were. She cried. I didn't. I'd done enough crying in my first life. In March 2030, Elena sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter, delivered to my apartment. Dear Wei, I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve for you to read this, but I need to try. I've spent the last year in therapy, trying to understand why I am the way I am, why I always needed to be the best, to be the favorite, to win every competition, even competitions you didn't know we were having. My therapist asked me to write down every memory I have of you from our childhood. It took me 3 weeks, and when I was done, I realized something horrible. I barely remember you at all. You were always there, always in the background, but I never really saw you. I remember mom and dad praising me. I remember feeling special and chosen. I remember thinking you were less than me because they treated you as less than me. And I never questioned it because it benefited me. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know what I did, what we all did, was unforgivable. I destroyed your consulting contract. I tried to seduce Marcus Chen in your first life. I found your old journal in the attic. I know about the rebirth, and I believe you. I stood by while our parents excluded you from everything that mattered. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see what you built, who you became, and how you did it without any of us. You're the successful one. You're the strong one. You always were. I'm working on being a better person. I'm paying back the settlement. I'm being kind to people who can't do anything for me. I'm trying to earn back some small measure of self-respect. I don't expect you to care. I don't expect you to respond. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I took from you, and I'm sorry. Your sister, if you'll still let me call myself that, Elena, I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't respond. Some apologies come too late. Some wounds cut too deep. And some people need to live with their consequences, not be absolved of them. But I didn't throw the letter away either. In June 2030, my brother David called me. We'd maintained a cordial relationship. He was the only family member who'd never actively hurt me, just ignored me through his own self-absorption. I need advice, he said. Not money, I promise. Just advice. About what? I met someone. She's amazing. But her family hates me because I'm a Lin. Because our family has a reputation now for being toxic and dysfunctional. That's fair, I said. We are toxic and dysfunctional. I know, but I'm not. I mean, I wasn't as good to you as I should have been. But I was just oblivious, not cruel, right? Right. So how do I prove to her family that I'm different? That I'm not like mom and dad and Elena? I thought about it. You introduce her to me. You show them that at least one person in the Lin family turned out okay and you're close to that person. Social proof. Would you do that? Would you meet her family and vouch for me? Maybe. What's her name? Jessica Tan. She's a pediatric surgeon. She's perfect, Wei. I can't lose her. Send me her information. I'll do some research. If she's actually perfect and you're actually serious, I'll help you. Thank you, really, thank you. He sounded so earnest, so young, even though he was 24 now. I realized he'd been a victim of our family too, in his own way. Being the golden child was its own kind of prison. I met Jessica Tan 3 weeks later. She was indeed perfect, brilliant, kind, with a spine of steel. Her family was understandably skeptical of David, given the Lin family's reputation in their social circles. Your family destroyed a consulting firm, bankrupted your father's company, and sued your own sister, Jessica's father said bluntly over dinner. Why should we believe David is any different? Because David's greatest sin was being spoiled and oblivious. I said calmly. Not malicious. He didn't participate in the abuse, he just benefited from it unknowingly. And when he realized what had been done to me, he was the only one who didn't try to justify it. You're very forgiving, Jessica's mother observed. I'm very selective about who I forgive. David earned it by being honest and by changing. The rest of my family hasn't. They approved the relationship. David and Jessica got engaged 6 months later. I was his best woman at the wedding. At the reception, David pulled me aside. "You saved my life today. Jessica is my whole world." "Don't make her regret it," I said. "Treat her like she's your first priority, always. Not your family, not your career. Her." "I will, I promise." He kept that promise. They're still happy, as far as I know. In November 2030, my father died of a heart attack. He was 62. My mother called to tell me, "Your father passed away this morning. The funeral is Saturday." "I'll be there," I said. The funeral was small and tense. Elena stood by my mother, both of them wearing black and looking genuinely devastated. David and Jessica stood with me, a visible division in the family. People whispered. Everyone knew the story by now, the brilliant daughter who'd been overlooked, who'd become wildly successful, who'd taken over her father's company and essentially bankrupted her sister. At the reception, my mother approached me. She looked older than 60, worn down by grief and guilt. "He never forgave himself," she said, "for how he treated you." "Good," I said. She flinched. "You're so hard now, so cold." "I'm what you made me." "I loved you." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of a complete family. You loved that I was quiet and easy and didn't cause problems. But you didn't love me. You don't even know me." "That's not true." "Name 3 things I care about. 3 things I'm passionate about. 3 dreams I have." She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You can't," I said softly, "because you never asked. You never cared. Enough to ask?" I walked away and didn't look back. After the funeral, something in me shifted. The anger that had fueled me for years started to cool, leaving behind something clearer and calmer. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd made everyone pay. I'd proven my worth 1,000 times over. And I was tired. I was 27 years old, wealthy beyond imagination, professionally successful, and completely alone. I thought about Maya Rodriguez, my first scholarship recipient. She was thriving at Stanford now, studying computer science and making friends and living the life I'd never had at her age. She called me every week to tell me about her classes, her projects, her dreams. I thought about the 50 other young women I'd given scholarships to through the Invisible Girls Initiative. They sent me emails and cards and updates, telling me I'd changed their lives. I thought about David and Jessica, building a healthy relationship free from family toxicity. And I thought about Marcus Chen, who'd moved to New York and started his own successful fund. I'd heard he was dating someone, a lawyer he'd met through work. I hoped he was happy. I hoped he'd learned to see people for who they were, not who he wanted them to be. As for Elena, I checked on her occasionally through mutual acquaintances. She was still working at the real estate agency, still paying off her settlement. She'd stopped posting on social media entirely. She lived quietly, almost invisibly. She'd become what I used to be. The irony wasn't lost on me. In January 2031, I sold my stake in Lin Technologies. The company had recovered fully, and my 40% share was worth $200 million after taxes. I donated half of it to the Invisible Girls Initiative, creating an endowment that would fund scholarships in perpetuity. The other half I kept. Not because I needed it, but because I'd earned it. I moved out of San Francisco to a small coastal town in Northern California. I bought a house with a view of the ocean and filled it with books and art and comfortable furniture. I adopted 2 cats, started painting, and learned to cook. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. I'd built my life around independence, and I wasn't ready to compromise that for anyone. On my 28th birthday, the day I died in my first life, I drove to the beach and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, and I thought about the girl who'd stepped off that roof, desperate and broken and convinced she had no other option. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," I whispered to her ghost. "But I avenged you. I made them all pay, and I built something better." The waves crashed against the shore, and I felt something release inside me. Forgiveness, maybe. Not for my family, but for myself. For all the years I'd spent being invisible, for all the times I'd accepted less than I deserved, for believing I needed their love to have value. I didn't need their love. I never had. I had my own. Epilogue. 5 years later, I'm 33 years old. The Invisible Girls Initiative has awarded over 500 scholarships and has a 98% college completion rate. 3 of our recipients have founded their own companies. One is working at NASA. Another just finished her PhD in artificial intelligence. I published a book about my experience, anonymously of course, titled The Girl with Glasses. It became a bestseller, resonating with thousands of women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, or betrayed by the people who should have protected them. I still live in my coastal house. I still paint and read and cook elaborate meals for one. I still have my 2 cats, now joined by a very dignified golden retriever named Justice. I'm writing this on my laptop, looking out at the ocean, and I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. My mother sends me Christmas cards every year. I don't respond, but I don't throw them away either. Elena sends cards too, updating me on her life in careful, humble sentences. She's a realtor now, doing well apparently. She's in therapy, she's trying. David and Jessica had a baby last year. They named her Way, after me. I cried when they told me. I'm her godmother, and I take that responsibility seriously. I invest in women-led startups now, focusing on companies that might otherwise be overlooked by traditional venture capital. I've had 3 massive successes and a dozen small ones. I'm building an empire again, but this time it's one built on lifting others up rather than tearing people down. Sometimes I still think about Marcus Chen. I looked him up recently. He's married now to that lawyer I'd heard about. They have a 1-year-old son. He looks happy in his photos, genuinely happy, not the calculated smile he used to wear. I'm glad. I never wanted him to suffer. I just wanted him to never have the chance to hurt me. And he didn't. He never even knew that version of me existed. Last week, I got an email from Maya Rodriguez. She's 23 now, working at Google, and she'd just gotten engaged. You saved my life, she wrote. I was invisible before you saw me. I want you to know that everything good in my life started with you believing in me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for teaching me to see myself. I printed that email and hung it on my wall next to my degrees and my book cover and my Forbes feature. Because that's what this was all about in the end. Not revenge, though that was satisfying. Not wealth, though that was useful. Not even justice, though that was necessary. It was about being seen. In my first life, I died invisible, overlooked, underestimated, unloved. In this life, I made myself impossible to ignore. Marcus Chen said my glasses made me ugly. He said I was hiding behind them like a coward. So I got LASIK. I built an empire. I became powerful and successful and wealthy. I made everyone who'd ever dismissed me regret it. And then I disappeared from their lives. Entirely because the ultimate power is not needing their attention at all. He never saw me again. None of them really did. But I saw myself, finally, clearly, without any lenses distorting the view. And that was always enough.